Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Now the Mass Casualty Commission is on break now until April 11th, and those that watched my video from last night from day 11 of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings will have heard that I was planning to come back on April 11th, although if something major happened in the meantime that I would also return. Well, it didn't take long. Last night there was a Facebook post by Darcy Dobson, who's the daughter of Heather O'Brien, who was killed on Plains Road. We heard about that yesterday in the foundational document presentation by Commission Counsel Roger Burrell. Ms. Dobson's Facebook post, last time I looked, was shared close to 700 times, and not surprising because it had very dramatic information. Which Ms. Dobson says was shared with the Mass Casualty Commission, and actually it is noted in the Mass Casualty Commission foundational document that was. And what it was is FitBit information, data from Heather O'Brien, and this FitBit data suggests that Miss O'Brien had a heart rate, an active heart rate, until approximately 6 p.m. on April 19th, 2020. The shooting on Plains Road happened not long after 10 a.m. in the morning, and so for Fitbit to be still active and recording a heart rate at 6 p.m. Certainly very dramatic information to have coming after the fact. Not included in yesterday's Mass Casualty Commission presentation of the facts of what happened along Plains Road. So quite something. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and about the usage of Fitbit data in court and how accurate that is considered to be. The exclusion of this information from yesterday's presentation, though, is itself a very important issue. I think it shows the risk of this foundational document approach. We have one limited version of events, and we don't have an immediate opportunity for anybody on the other side, the other counsel, to cross-examine, to bring up other parts, other issues, other elements of the situation that would give us a more fulsome understanding of what actually took place that day. Instead, we'll have witnesses at a later time, but this sort of version of events gets settled in people's mind, improperly so in this case. And in his introduction to the foundational documents, and this was echoed by Commissioner MacDonald, Counsel Roger Burrell says that, well, this is disturbing information, details are too disturbing, and so some things are not going to be covered. Well, there's ways to present disturbing information. There's there's euphemisms. There's different ways to say things without being too graphic or gruesome about it, but still gets the information across, and that didn't happen here. Left out very important information in this case. Now, let's talk about Fitbits for a second for people that aren't familiar with fitness trackers. I'm wearing one. It's the Fitbit Versa 3. I just got it. This is my third Fitbit. Wear it all the time. It tracks your sleep, it tracks your steps, tracks your heart rate, your exercise, changes in heart rate from exercise. It'll track your steps, GPS on distancing if you're going for a run or a bike. If you just get on the ice and start playing hockey, the Fitbit recognizes that this is exercise and starts tracking that for your own interest's sake, comparative purposes. Now, is it accurate? Well, if you look to third-party sources, studies that are done on these, I like to read Outside Magazine. There's lots of other articles that show the accuracy of it's not just Fitbit, the Apple Watch, Garmin's, other fitness trackers the accuracy of these devices is quite good, and it is very reliable. It's been used in courts. I did a quick scan last night on the Canley site, which is where you can find any Canadian court cases which have been published. Fitness trackers aren't featured. If I just did a quick search for fitness trackers, and they're not included, but they are used, I know, in personal injury cases. People use their fitness data to demonstrate, if you were an active person that was running or biking or being, a certain number of average steps a day before an injury, and then after your injury, say you've gone from an average of 8,000 steps a day down to 2,000 or even less. Or your exercise level, your heart rate, all of these comparators, you can use that data to show how a lifestyle change has been forced upon you because of an injury. So that's a way it can be used. So far, it doesn't seem to be used in Canadian criminal courts much. It's not something that, at all. It's not something that can be compelled. You can't be compelled to give up your personal data. Although I wouldn't be surprised if that changes in the future, particularly with a very serious allegation, a murder charge, or sexual assaults, or these sorts of things. So we'll see how that develops in the future. I know in the United States they have been used. There was one example given, a case out of Florida, where somebody had accused a person of sexual assault, but their Fitbit data showed that after they said they were, supposedly in bed and then were attacked, that they had 1,000 steps on their Fitbit, and in fact had been staging a crime scene. So it was used in that case to exonerate an innocent person. So all of that is to say that the data is accurate enough to be used in court. Of course, I would point out, and this is the case for any social media as well, anything that you post publicly, if you put it on Facebook, if you put your Fitbit data on Facebook, that data, or Strava, if people use Strava for running, hiking, biking activities, those things that are posted publicly can always be used against you as well. Like I say, all to say that this is accurate data, generally speaking, which can be used in court and is considered quite reliable. So, actually, in the Desmond inquiry, the question came up. Corporal Desmond's wife was wearing an Apple Watch at the time she was killed, and so the question I asked Corporal Berthume, actually, who's on the Mass Casualty Commission. He's involved in that investigation as well, but he was involved in the Desmond inquiry investigation. Asked him whether anybody had made an attempt to get the data from Shayna Desmond's Apple Watch, and they didn't. They didn't feel that was ethical to try to get that data, and really it wasn't necessary in that case in any event for anything that was particularly relevant to what the inquiry was seeking to find out. But here it certainly is. We have... Well, I went through the foundational document in more detail last night after reading Miss Dobson's post. So the first two officers on the scene of Miss O'Brien's vehicle where she was shot were Constable Coleman and Constable Fahy. Constable Coleman says that she did not feel a pulse on Heather O'Brien, and then the EMRT, which I think is Emergency Medical Response Team, but these are police officers. Corporal Ivany arrived, and he did it. He took over and did an assessment. Constable Fahy says that he was there and did a check on Miss O'Brien, that she had a pulse, that she was barely alive, is how he put it, that he did he was checking on her, and then Corporal Ivany came, and because of his role, he took over. Constable Fahy had sent away fire services and also sent away Michelle, if I'm not saying that right, it looked like either Michelle or Michelena O'Brien, Miss O'Brien's daughter, who was trying to get to her mother to have a moment with her. he said he sent away the ambulance, fire services as well at that time because the situation they felt was too dangerous. Although had they really recognized what was going on, they would have known that the killer was already quite far away at that time and there was no danger. But it seems as the officers on scene still felt that there was quite grave danger. Constable Fahy tried to put the Jetta in park. So obviously he was inside the vehicle. Miss O'Brien was still inside the vehicle, and you can't put the vehicle in park from outside. So that's relevant because when Corporal Ivany takes over, he indicates that the doors were jammed shut and that the windows were up. So there's a direct contradiction there. Corporal Ivany originally called for EHS and life flight, but that was considered to be too dangerous, and so they were not allowed into the scene. And Corporal Ivany felt for a pulse, but this is a problem now. Corporal Ivany is the medically trained officer in the situation and says he felt with his thumb for a pulse. Now, I remember as a kid being told how to find a person's pulse on the wrist, on the neck, and I was told, first thing is, don't use your thumb. Use your fingers, because you might get a false pulse through using your thumb. So that was concerning that he didn't do that part properly. They both, that is Corporal Ivany and I think it's Constable Mahar, checked other parts of Miss O'Brien's body to see if they could feel for a pulse and did not feel anything. But if you read through the portion of Corporal Ivany's interview that's included in the foundational document, and I should note here that not all of the documents that are there's links in the foundational document, but as of this morning, those links are not active. In other words, the other documents that feed into the foundational document, statements and such, are not included. But if you read the portions that are, it really gives a picture of a frantic and chaotic scene, a rushed operation where everybody involved seems to have one eye down the road or into the woods and are sort of, looking around to make sure that, the killer's not there or that no further danger is observed. So they, Corporal Ivany and Constable Mahar, note that Miss O'Brien is deceased, or they feel that she is, and they call off EHS. So what does that mean? That means we have no independent verification from anyone else that, certainly from a medical professional, that Miss O'Brien was in fact deceased at that time. Also noteworthy, the Mass Casualty Commission notes in the foundational document that they are awaiting Corporal Ivany's after-action report. This is 2 years later. Still waiting for that report. Same with Constable Mahar, waiting for Constable Mahar to give an interview with the Mass Casualty Commission, which seems suspicious at this point that they wouldn't have those documents submitted or those interviews completed. And they note in the foundational document that they are, quote, investigating the FitBit information that was provided to them by the O'Brien family. So none of that was mentioned yesterday during the presentation by Commission Counsel Mr. Burrow. So what is the purpose of these foundational document presentations, if not, is it just to give us an overview, or is it to dig into some of the real issues that are outstanding here? Well, I guess we have our answer from the Commission that they're just, going to give a sanitized version of events and not dig into the more difficult elements of it. So the other part of this is, say there was no EHS called on scene or allowed on scene to do independent an independent verification. Also, the family members weren't allowed to have a moment with their loved one. I don't understand this. I mean, I understand the reason, but I'm not persuaded by it. As I think they want to maintain some integrity of the crime scene. But I think you have to let a family member have a moment with their loved one as they're dying, their mother, their sister, I think it's just heartless not to allow that to happen. There's no getting that moment back. It's just heartbreaking to think about that from the perspective of the family member who sees their loved one in a vehicle, just a few feet away and can't get there. So the Fitbit data itself that was published there last night by Ms. Dobson shows that after about the 10 o'clock time frame and into the afternoon, the Fitbit data shows a heart rate somewhere above an average of 120 beats per minute. That's quite high. That would be consistent with pretty fast walking or other fairly vigorous exercise. A resting heart rate would normally be in the 60 beats per minute range. So what does that mean? Then we don't know what else happens because Constables Coleman and Fahy were on the scene and watching the scene, but then they leave at 2 p.m. and it's unknown whether the body was still there at that time. It's not noted in the foundational document. Now, could as a body is struggling under those circumstances, does the heart rate elevate as it's struggling to survive? I'm not sure. That's a medical question, and there are many questions that arise from this. But really what it is a big problem with the Mass Casualty Commission approach to this kind of evidence. The family and the public deserves answers. Have they had any doctors analyzing this? Anybody analyzing what could have happened? Some sort of forensic work done on this. That's important. I think the family deserves it, the public deserves it, and so hopefully with the publicity associated with Ms. Dobson's post, that some pressure is put on the Mass Casualty Commission to make that happen. So anyway, I thought that was important to come back and talk about that this morning. I saw that last night and just wanted to add that to what took place yesterday. So anything else arises, in the meantime, we'll be back to talk about it. Otherwise, we'll see you on the 11th of April. All right, so that's all for now. We'll see you next time.